This is the brand new 2020 Audi A3 Sportback, which is a rival for the Mercedes A-Class and BMW 1 Series. It's Audi's attempt to make a usable, stylish, upmarket family hatchback that's maybe designed for people who are a little bit too posh to buy a Ford Focus. No offense to Focus owners, I used to have one, but this is definitely at the premium end of the hatchback spectrum. Now, let's talk about some of the design highlights. Audi's design game is on point right now. I'll talk you through some of my favorite bits. First and foremost, big, massive grille because, hey, 2020 car design. This one's not quite as tall as the previous version, but it is wider, so it gives it a more aggressive appearance. They've also changed the headlights. This one's got a unique blade effect for the LEDs, and it's got 15 separate LEDs on the outer edges, plus this very aggressive looking bonnet crease. Speaking of creases, the side is wavy. Literally, look at it. It's almost like liquid, the way it flows in and out. It goes into a concave central section here. It's almost like a 3D effect. The previous car was almost completely flat, but now with these creases, you can really get a sense of how the light and the shadow play off against the paintwork, which, in case you're wondering, is Tango Red. This is the Sportback version, and the deal with that is it has a sloping rear, which gives it a more kind of coupe aesthetic, but to me it looks like a pretty normal hatchback. This has a much larger spoiler than before, plus a couple of newly designed rear lights, and if you look down here, on the diesel version it's got fake exhaust. The actual exhaust is tucked up underneath so you can't actually see it. Audi hiding the shame of an internal combustion engine car. It's all lies. If you thought the outside was different, wait till you see inside. It's a case of out with the old, in with the new. Remember the old infotainment screen, which looked like a tablet had been glued to the dashboard? Gone. And the vents from before, which looked like turbines from an old fighter jet? Gone as well. Now you get a big 10-inch display plonked right in the middle of the dashboard, and that's the one you get in the more premium Audi models like the S6s and S7s. The dashboard itself is really cool, really modern, full of lots of angles, and the vents up top give me a sense of the Audi R8, and the whole thing, oddly, is reminiscent of a Lamborghini. Speaking of the screen, this actually comes as standard, which is great. You don't have to spend any extra cash on it, and it's really, really responsive. Apparently, Audi say the chip inside this is 10 times more powerful than the previous generation model, and that's great because that chip doesn't have to power just this screen. It also has to power Audi's virtual cockpit up here, which gives you access to all of the driving information you could ever wish for, plus a really cool Google Maps style display of your surroundings. It's really good. The only problem, and some people might get annoyed with this, is with a lot of touching and tapping, the screen will acquire lots and lots of fingerprints. But don't worry, because in the glove box, Audi actually supply you with a cleaning cloth. So if you got OCD like me, then you can actually clean it and get it back to its original pristine condition. Another problem you might want to know about, where's the volume knob? It doesn't have one. Instead, the volume is controlled via this little circle thing on the center console. In theory, that's okay, but look at the way it works. You actually have to move your finger in a in a clockwise or anti-clockwise direction, but it's too sensitive. It basically goes from silence to RIP eardrums in about half a turn. Bring back knobs. From a practicality standpoint, the A3 is actually not too bad. The wheelbase has shortened ever so slightly, but in general, you do get a decent amount of room. Audi reckon the car now has 7mm more headroom, about 6mm more shoulder room up front, and around the back, you get 3mm more shoulder room and 2mm more elbow room. Yeah, thanks guys, generous. You're not really gonna feel that difference. But in general, in terms of the storage spaces in this car, they've actually done quite a good job. So up front, you get plenty of room for things like your sweeties, your other sweeties. And if you're anything like me, then you're gonna need room for even more sweeties. And they've done a really good job of giving you lots of space to play with. Thanks, Audi. So what's the A3 Sportback like out on the road? Well, when the car launches in the UK, you're going to have a choice of two engines, a 35 TFSI and a 35 TDI, petrol and a diesel. Both make the same amount of power, both deliver the same performance, give or take, The only real difference is the amount of emissions and fuel economy, but we'll get to those numbers in just a second. First of all, what's it like to drive? First impressions, really positive. A lot of these cheaper cars from premium brands can tend to feel as if they've had a few corners cut. They sometimes have a few kind of cheap and nasty edges to them, but not this one. This actually feels really nice. There's a nice weight to all the controls, everything from the indicator to the wipers to the buttons down here on the center console. Even the gear shifter has a nice Audi feel to it. This one's a diesel, so you could be forgiven for thinking it's gonna have a rattly sound to it, but not a bit of it. It actually sounds quite refined for what it is. And if you disregard that noise for a second and just focus on the rest of the cabin, what you'll notice is that the sound deadening is really impressive. The whole cabin is quiet, refined. It's just a nice place to spend time. You're probably unlikely to ever really push an A3 Sportback that hard, but I feel like how fast is it is a fair question, and it's not that fast, but 150 horsepower is decent. It'll do 0 to 62 in about 8.5 seconds, which is quick enough to win the occasional traffic light Grand Prix or to help you out whenever you're merging onto a motorway. It's the kind of engine that you'll never actually feel is lacking in too much power. Gearbox options, well, you get a choice of either manual or automatic, and I can tell you that the gearbox is actually quite smooth. It's unintrusive, it changes up or down without too much fuss, never actually feels that flustered. Occasionally, when you put it in sport mode and allow the car to downshift by itself from, say, third gear to second gear, the gear changes can feel a little bit on the clunky side, but you'd expect that because the car is trying to change gears as quickly as possible to facilitate sporty driving. You can also change gear using the paddle shifters behind the steering wheel. These work fairly well, although ultimately it's a little bit of a gimmick in a car that doesn't offer high performance. You'll probably use it once or twice and then just allow the car to do things by itself. The suspension is actually pretty decent. Out here on these smooth roads, it's perfectly fine, as you might expect. Obviously, I can't give you a full, thorough opinion on what it will be like to drive on potholed roads in the UK. I'm trying my best to find the potholes out here. But ultimately, I think this is a car that's going to ride pretty well.
Fuel economy is impressive. The diesel model can theoretically return nearly 49 miles per gallon, with CO2 rated at 132 grams per kilometre. Those figures are great given the performance on offer and mean you should be able to save quite a bit of cash at the fuel pump, which you might want to invest in a few options.
If you can spare the extra cash, then have a think about getting the Comfort and Sound Pack, which includes a 15-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system, and it is banging. You also get heated front seats, a reverse parking camera, and park assist, which basically automatically parks the car for you. It costs 1,500 quid, but I think it's well worth it because if you're getting this car on a lease over, say, 3 years, then that works out to be about £30 extra a month. The driver assistant package, I'm less interested in that. That gets you adaptive cruise control, traffic sign recognition, but it costs £1,800. I'd say only get that if you do a lot of motorway miles and need adaptive cruise.
How does all of this compare with the likes of a Ford Focus? Well, for the same money, you could get a Focus ST Line X with a smaller 1-litre engine and less performance. The Focus will have bigger wheels, heated power seats, and dual-zone climate control as standard, but if you're willing to pay for those little extras, the Audi will probably end up feeling more special.
Sat behind the steering wheel, that's one thing this car does so well. It makes you feel like you're in something really nice, something really pleasant, something really special. I think part of that feel-good factor comes from the fact that you've got so much technology around you. You look in front of you, you've got head-up display, a great addition on this segment of car. Plus, it's got a really cool voice control feature. Let's try it out. I'm hungry.
Searching for a restaurant nearby.
So it actually understands natural language.
Please now say additional search terms or select a line number.
Cancel. So it actually understands natural everyday language. You don't have to learn specific commands in order to get to use it. What's cool is in the future, they'll send over-the-air software updates so that it will be able to understand an even wider array of commands. It's especially great because it means that you won't be leaving fingerprints constantly all over your lovely gloss black screen and have to be constantly cleaning it. Ultimately, I don't think people buy an A3 Sportback because they're looking for extreme driving pleasure. They buy one of these things because they're looking for a car that makes them feel good about themselves. And I think in that respect, this car is a massive tick.
It might not be the most thrilling or the best value, but if you're looking for a well put together hatchback that's pretty efficient with loads of tech, the A3 Sportback is a car you'll be proud to have on your driveway.